What does it tell you about a country's best fighter jet when the only way it can win is with backup? And that too, not one extra aircraft, not two, but three drone wingmen flying alongside it before the simulation finally goes their way? Well, China ran that war game themselves. They conducted their own research. They had their own journal and their own conclusion. And here is what makes this story different from every other comparison video you have seen. China did not hide all this. They published it in a domestic aerospace journal, buried in technical language, assuming the world was not reading closely enough to notice. Well, someone was. Because tucked inside that paper, between the data tables and the flight equations, is a decision that tells you exactly where this rivalry actually stands. Their jet kept losing. So they changed the rules. And the way they changed them is the part that should have been front page news. Now here is where it gets interesting. Adding drone wingmen is not desperation. It is actually the future of air combat, and America is already building that same capability into a jet that has not even flown yet. Except the number America is planning around is not 3, and it's not 8 either. The gap between what China needed in that simulation and what America is already engineering is the kind of gap that does not close overnight. And by the time we get to the end of this, that number is going to reframe everything you think you know about who is actually ahead in this race. Let's get into it. Before we dive in, drop a comment right now, one word only: who wins this rivalry in 10 years? China or the US? We are coming back to your answers at the end. Part 1. What China actually tested and why it matters. Let us set the scene properly, because the context here is everything. Chinese aerospace researchers ran a series of what are called beyond visual range combat simulations. Beyond visual range simply means the kind of fight that happens before pilots can even see each other. It includes missiles launched from dozens of miles away, radar locks, electronic countermeasures, and overall positioning. This is a kind of tactical chess match that plays out at the speed of sound, where the pilot who gets the first clean picture of the battlefield is almost always the pilot who goes home. In the one-on-one scenario, the F-22 Raptor won. Every time. The simulation credited 3 specific things for that outcome, and none of them were luck. First, the F-22's radar cross-section, which is simply the measurement of how visible an aircraft is to enemy radar, was small enough that the J-20's targeting systems could not get a clean lock before the F-22 had already fired. Second, the F-22's sensor fusion, which is the ability to pull data from multiple sources simultaneously and hand the pilot one clear, unified picture of what is happening around him, gave the American pilot an information advantage that compounded every single decision he made. Third, the F-22's ability to cruise at supersonic speed without burning its afterburner, which is a capability known as Supercruise, meant it could reposition across the engagement space and dictate the terms of the fight in ways the J-20 simply could not keep pace with. So to match this, the Chinese researchers added 3 drone wingmen to the J-20 side. They flooded the engagement space. This means more radar returns, more simultaneous threats, and more vectors for the F-22 to process at once. And in that configuration, the outcome finally shifted. In order to cancel out the advantages the F-22 carries by itself, the simulation required 3 additional aircraft. But this just means that you're not beating the F-22 in that scenario, you're just outnumbering it. And any pilot who has spent serious time studying air combat history will tell you those are 2 completely different conversations. But here is where this gets genuinely complicated. Because the drone wingman move is not something to be panicked about, it is actually the direction air combat is heading everywhere, including inside America's own program. The difference is the scale. And when you see the number America is working with compared to what China needed in that simulation, the 2 efforts stop looking like they are even in the same conversation. Part 2, the F-22 was built to win alone. There is a reason the F-22 Raptor has never been sold to a single allied nation. Not Britain, not Australia, and not Japan, despite Japan being one of America's most trusted defense partners in the entire Pacific. The United States Congress passed a specific law prohibiting its export. That is not standard procedure for a military aircraft. That is a statement about how seriously this country takes what is inside that machine. The F-22 was designed around one mission, and one mission only. And that is not a ground attack and not the kind of flexible multi-role work that most modern fighters are built to handle. The F-22 was built to own the sky. Period. Everything else was an afterthought. The front-facing radar cross-section of the F-22 is roughly the size of a marble, not a golf ball and not a tennis ball. To put that in plain terms, a commercial passenger jet shows up on radar like a building. A standard fourth-generation fighter shows up like a car. The F-22 shows up like something you would genuinely struggle to find even if you already knew it was there and were specifically hunting for it. Now add Supercruise to that picture. Most fighters need to burn enormous amounts of extra fuel through their afterburner just to break the sound barrier, and they can only sustain that for a short window before the fuel situation turns critical. The F-22 cruises at supersonic speed as a matter of normal operation. That means no afterburner and no countdown clock on fuel. It can move across a vast section of sky, reposition at will, and arrive at the fight with energy and options that the opposing pilot simply does not have. And then there is what happens inside the cockpit. The F-22's sensor fusion system pulls data from the aircraft's own radar, from allied aircraft nearby, from ground stations, from satellites overhead, and it delivers one clean, prioritized, immediately actionable picture to the pilot. A retired Air Force pilot once described it as the difference between trying to read a map in the dark and having someone whisper exactly the right information into your ear at exactly the right moment. The pilot is not managing raw data. The aircraft handles the data. The pilot only makes decisions. That combination is what the Chinese simulation kept running into. Near invisibility on radar, sustained supersonic repositioning, and a pilot already acting on a clear picture while the opposing side is still sorting out what is happening. It is not one advantage. There are three advantages that compound each other in real time, and it is why 3 additional aircraft were needed before the results would change. The secret to survival in the air is knowing what you are going to do before the other pilot knows he has a problem. Said General Chuck Yeager, first pilot in history to break the sound barrier. Now here is the part of this story that every coverage piece missed completely. Because yes, the drone wingmen shifted the outcome, but the specific way they had to be used to do it points directly at something in the J-20's design that analysts have been quietly flagging for years. Once you see it, the 3-drone requirement stops looking like a smart tactic and starts looking like a workaround for a problem that never got fully solved. Part 3. What 3 drones actually tell you about the J-20. Let's be straight about the J-20, because it deserves an honest look. The J-20 Mighty Dragon is a serious piece of engineering. It carries its weapons internally, which matters enormously for stealth, because anything mounted on the outside of an aircraft immediately increases how visible it is to a radar. It has a wideband active, electronically scanned array radar. It has the legs to operate meaningfully across the Taiwan Strait and push deep into the Western Pacific. China built this jet with real ambition and real capability behind it. Dismissing it would be a mistake, but the simulation kept exposing a specific structural problem that design analysts outside China have been pointing to for years. And it comes down to a part of the aircraft most people would not immediately look at. The J-20 has canard fins. These are the small forward swept surfaces positioned near the nose of the aircraft that help with maneuverability at high angles of attack. They do that job well. But they also create radar reflection angles that a fully clean design like the F-22 simply does not produce. The F-22 has no canards, no forward protrusions, and no surfaces that bounce radar energy back toward a receiver at predictable angles. But the J-20 does. The engine inlet geometry on the J-20 has also drawn persistent questions from aeronautical engineers who have studied the available imagery carefully over the years. The honest position is that nobody outside China's military has exact radar cross-section figures for the J-20. But aircraft design tells a story that experienced engineers can read even without classified data. And what they consistently read is that the J-20 is stealthier than any fourth-generation fighter flying today and measurably less stealthy than the F-22 in a straight comparison. That gap is what the simulation kept exposing in practice. The F-22 was getting targeting solutions on the J-20 before the J-20 could establish a clean lock in return. That is not a theoretical advantage on a spec sheet. That is a stealth and sensor edge playing out at Mach speed in real time, shaping every exchange before a single missile is fired. The drones address that problem by saturating the engagement space. It means more radar returns, more simultaneous targets, and more demand on the F-22 systems all at once. In that environment, the J-20 found openings it could not create alone. But understand what that means. The J-20 did not beat the F-22. The volume beat it. And those are two fundamentally different things. American pilots trained specifically for volume. Red flag exercises at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada deliberately put American pilots into scenarios where they are outnumbered, outgunned, and facing every adversary tactic available simultaneously. That is the whole point. The kill ratios that come out of those exercises, 15-1 in favor of the F-35 against aggressor squadrons flying everything they have, exist precisely because American training is built around disadvantaged numbers from the very first day. Here is the part that actually keeps serious defense planners up at night, though. Not the simulation result itself, what comes after it. Because China is not sitting still, and the drone wingman concept is not a one-time fix. It is the direction this entire rivalry is heading. The question is, who gets there at scale first? And the answer is already being assembled in a program most people have only just started paying attention to. Part 4. America's answer and why the simulation already has an expiry date. In March 2025, the United States Air Force awarded Boeing the contract for the F-47, the first sixth-generation fighter contract ever awarded anywhere in the world. And one of its foundational design requirements, written in from the very beginning before a single line was drawn, is the ability to command a fleet of artificial intelligence-controlled drone wingmen called collaborative combat aircraft. The number defense planners are working with is not 3 drones per aircraft. Current projections have each F-47 coordinating with up to 20 or more collaborative combat aircraft simultaneously, with certain mission profiles calling for even larger swarms depending on the objective. Some analyses of the full program, factoring in the total F-47 fleet size planned, have described the combined force as over 1,500 combat platforms operating as a single network system. Let that land for a moment. China ran a simulation where 3 drone wingmen gave the J-20 an edge over the F-22. America looked at that entire category of problem and built a 6th-generation aircraft designed from scratch to direct 20. That is not a counter. That is a different game being played on a different board. The F-47 also carries a combat radius exceeding 1,000 nautical miles, almost double the F-22's 590. Its official stealth classification sits in a category the Air Force calls Stealth Plus++, which is above both the F-35 and the F-22 on the service's own internal scale. And it will be flown by pilots who came through Red Flag, who carry 30 years of real combat experience baked into their training culture, and who learn from instructors who were actually there. There is a story from the opening hours of the Gulf War in 1991 that gets passed around quietly in Air Force training circles. An F-15 Eagle pilot found himself in exactly the kind of chaotic, multi-threat, everything happening at once environment that his training had prepared him for in detail and that his Iraqi opponent had never experienced in his life. The Iraqi pilot froze at the moment of decision. The American pilot had already made his. The F-15 Eagle finished that entire war with a combat record of 104 kills against 0 losses. Not because the jet was so far beyond everything else in the sky, because the people flying it had been put through that exact situation under pressure over and over again until the chaos was no longer frightening but just another mission. The pilots who will climb into F-47s one day are being built from that same culture right now. They are logging hours today. They are getting debriefed today, and they are learning from instructors who were shot at for real and came home with lessons that no manual captures. In the end, China published the answer themselves. Their best jet alone could not do it. That is not an American claim. That is a Chinese research paper the jet America is building to replace the one that kept winning has not flown yet. And when it does, 3 drone wingmen are not going to be enough to restart that conversation. Some gaps close with money and time. Some gaps close with engineering. And some gaps take something that cannot be ordered, manufactured, or rushed. 30 years of real missions is one of those things. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think China closes the drone gap before the F-47 enters service? Or does 30 years of real combat experience in America's training culture make the simulation result inevitable no matter how many wingmen get added? Drop your take in the comments. Both sides of that argument have serious merit, and I want to see where you land.